The rain fell in sheets across New Haven Colony's industrial district, drumming against metal rooftops and washing away the perpetual grime that coated everything in this forgotten corner of human space. Jensen Drake pulled his weathered medical bag closer, cursing as another droplet found its way past his collar. 10 years, as a military combat, medic hadn't prepared him for the particular miseries of civilian life in the outer colonies. The call had come in just as he was closing his clinic, an anonymous tip about someone needing urgent medical attention in Warehouse Sector 7. Usually, Jensen ignored such calls. They too often led to ambushes or worse. But something in the caller's voice, a desperate edge of genuine fear, had made him grab his bag and head out into the storm. A flash of movement caught his eye, a shadow darting between the rusted shipping containers that lined the narrow alley. Jensen's hand instinctively moved to the concealed pulse pistol at his hip, old combat reflexes dying hard. "Hello?" he called out, voice steady despite his racing heart. "I'm a medic. If you need help, show yourself." The shadow hesitated, then slowly emerged into the dim light of a flickering street lamp. Jensen's breath caught in his throat. The figure before him was unmistakably alien, tall and graceful, with iridescent silver skin that seemed to ripple like liquid mercury. But it was her eyes that held him transfixed, three luminous orbs of deep violet that spoke of pain and desperation. "Please," she whispered, her voice carrying an ethereal quality that sent shivers down his spine. "They're coming. I have nowhere else to go." Before Jensen could respond, the alien stumbled forward, revealing a nasty plasma burn across her side. His medical training kicked in instantly, overriding any hesitation. He rushed forward to catch her before she fell, noting how surprisingly light she felt in his arms. "I'm Lyria," she managed, her breathing labored. "The last princess of the Stellaris, and if they find me, everything my people died for will be lost." Jensen's mind raced. The Stellaris were supposed to be extinct. Their entire civilization had mysteriously vanished from the galaxy 6 months ago, leaving behind nothing but empty worlds and unanswered questions. Yet here was living proof of their survival, bleeding out in his arms. "I'm Jensen," he replied, already pulling medical supplies from his bag. "And right now, Your Highness, the only thing that matters is keeping you alive." As he worked to stabilize her wound, the sound of distant engines grew closer. Lyria tensed, her silver skin pulsing with anxiety. "They've tracked me," she whispered. "You should run, leave me. I've already condemned myself by coming here." Jensen looked up from his work, meeting those haunting violet eyes. He had seen enough war, enough death, to know when someone carried the weight of genocide on their shoulders. Whatever had happened to the Stellaris, this woman held the key to understanding it all. "Not happening," he said firmly, finishing the last synthetic skin seal over her wound. "My clinic has a hidden basement level left over from the colony wars. If anyone's looking for you, that's the last place they'll search." Lyria stared at him, confusion evident in her alien features. "Why would you risk yourself for me? You don't even know what I've done, what I'm running from." Jensen helped her to her feet, supporting her weight as they began moving through the shadows toward his clinic. "Because 10 years ago, I swore an oath to help those in need, never specified what species they had to be." A ghost of a smile crossed Lyria's face, but it quickly faded as the sound of search vehicles grew louder. "They won't stop looking," she warned. "And when they find me, they'll kill anyone who's helped me." "Then we better make sure they don't find you," Jensen replied grimly, punching in his clinic's security code. As the door slid open, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was about to be pulled into something far bigger than a simple act of medical charity. The distant searchlights painted the rain-slick streets in harsh sweeps of illumination, but Jensen and Lyria were already gone, vanished into the shadows of his clinic. Above them, ships of unknown origin continued their relentless search, hunting for the last survivor of a civilization that was never meant to endure. "Welcome to New Haven," Jensen muttered as he secured the basement door. "Though I'm starting to think that name might be a bit too optimistic." Basement of Jensen's clinic hummed with the soft whir of ancient air recyclers. 3 days had passed since he'd brought Lyria here, and in that time the searches had only intensified. Through his security feeds, He watched as teams of heavily armed operatives in unmarked armor swept through the industrial district, their methodical movements speaking of military precision. Lyria sat cross-legged on a makeshift cot, her silver skin dimmed to a matte gray in the low light. Her wound had healed remarkably fast, leaving behind only a faint shimmer on her side. She watched Jensen as he checked the monitors again, her three violet eyes tracking his every movement. "They're getting closer," she observed quietly. "The search pattern is tightening." Jensen nodded, dropping into a worn chair across from her. "Want to tell me who exactly they are? Might help if I knew what we're up against." Lyria's hands twisted in her lap, a surprisingly human gesture of anxiety. "They call themselves the Purifiers. They believe that certain species, certain civilizations, represent a threat to the natural order of the galaxy." She laughed bitterly. "My people were apparently one such threat." "Because of your abilities?" Jensen asked. He'd noticed things over the past few days, the way objects sometimes moved when Lyria was distressed, how the lights flickered in sync with her emotions. "Partially," she admitted. "The Stellaris evolved alongside quantum phenomena. We learned to manipulate probability fields to bend reality in small ways. The Purifiers saw this as an abomination." Her voice cracked. "They spent decades infiltrating our worlds, positioning themselves throughout our government. Then, in one coordinated strike, they activated devices that would erase us from existence." Jensen leaned forward. "But you survived." "Because of my mother." Lyria's eyes dimmed with grief. "She was the queen, the most powerful of us. She sensed the betrayal coming and used the last of her strength to create a probability shield around me. Then she pushed me through space itself, sending me as far from our worlds as she could." A proximity alarm chirped softly, making them both tense. Jensen checked the display and relaxed slightly. "Just the regular patrol. We're still safe." "No one is safe," Lyria stated firmly. "The Purifiers believe in absolute cleansing. They won't stop until every trace of my people is gone, including our knowledge." She stood, packing the small space. "That's why they're so desperate to find me. I carry within me the complete genetic and cultural memory of my species. Every technology, every piece of art, every story, all encoded in my cellular structure." Jensen whistled softly. "That's why you're not just a princess, you're a backup drive." "A living archive," Lyria corrected. "The last hope for my people's legacy to survive." She stopped packing, turning to face him directly. "Which is why you need to turn me in." "Excuse me." "The longer you hide me, the more danger you're in. The Purifiers will tear this colony apart to find me. They'll torture and kill anyone they suspect of helping me." Her voice was thick with guilt. "I won't have more deaths on my conscience." Jensen stood, moving to stand before her. Despite her height, there was something infinitely fragile about her in that moment. "Let me tell you about conscience," he said quietly. "I spent 10 years patching up soldiers just so they could go back out and die on some other battlefield. I watched good people get ground up in conflicts they didn't understand, fighting for causes that meant nothing in the end. But this," he gestured to her, "this matters, you matter." The lights flickered as Lyria's control slipped, her emotion causing ripples in the local probability field. "You don't understand what they're capable of." "Maybe not," Jensen admitted. "But I understand what I'm capable of, and I'm not letting you face this alone." Before Lyria could respond, every alarm in the basement suddenly blazed to life. Jensen rushed to the monitors, his heart dropping as he took in the feeds. "They're here. A full tactical team moving building by building." "How did they find us?" Lyria's voice was tight with fear. Jensen's eyes narrowed as he spotted a familiar face among the searchers. "Because I trusted the wrong person. My supplier, Kine, he's leading them right to us." He began rapidly gathering supplies, shoving them into his medical bag. "We need to move, now." "Where can we go? The streets are crawling with them." Jensen pulled up a maintenance schematic on his tablet. "The old maintenance tunnels. They run deep under the colony, connecting to the original mining operations. If we can reach them, we might be able to lose our pursuers in the maze." Heavy footsteps echoed from above as the tactical team entered the clinic. Lyria's skin rippled with nervous energy. "And if we can't?" Jensen checked his pulse pistol, ensuring it was fully charged. Then we make our stand here, but either way, we face it together. The ceiling creaked as their hunters moved closer to the hidden entrance. Lyria reached out, her slender fingers intertwining with Jensen's calloused hand. In that touch was a promise that whatever came next, neither of them would face it alone. "Ready," Jensen whispered, his free hand hovering over the release for the tunnel access. Lyria's eyes glowed with determination. "Ready." Above them, the purifiers began their descent, unaware that their quarry was about to lead them on a chase through the dark heart of New Haven Colony. The hunt was about to become a lot more interesting. The maintenance tunnels beneath New Haven Colony were a labyrinth of darkness and decay, the air thick with the musty scent of abandoned dreams. Jensen led the way, his handheld light casting long shadows across rusted pipes and crumbling concrete. Behind him, Lyria moved with ethereal grace, her silver skin providing a faint luminescence that seemed to push back against the oppressive dark. "They're still following," she whispered, her three violet eyes focused on something Jensen couldn't perceive. "The probability fields are disturbed. They're using some kind of tracking technology." Jensen paused at an intersection, consulting the ancient maintenance maps he downloaded. "They shouldn't be able to track us this deep, unless—" he trailed off, a cold realization settling in his gut. "Unless what?" Lyria asked, touching his arm gently. "Unless they're not tracking you at all," Jensen growled. "They're tracking me. The medical supplies kind sold me, they must have been tagged." He swung his bag off his shoulder, ready to discard it. Lyria caught his wrist. "Wait, we need those supplies." Her skin rippled with concentration, and suddenly the bag was enveloped in a shimmering field of quantum uncertainty. "There. I've shifted their probability of existence slightly out of phase. The trackers should be blind now." A distant clang echoed through the tunnels, followed by the sound of armored boots on metal. Jensen gestured toward a narrow side passage. "This way. There's an old emergency bunker ahead. We can regroup there." They moved swiftly through the darkness, the sounds of pursuit growing fainter. The bunker, when they reached it, was little more than a reinforced room with ancient emergency supplies and a sealed door. Jensen secured the entrance while Lyria examined their surroundings. "This colony," she said quietly, running her fingers along the walls, "it has known war before." Jensen nodded, checking their remaining supplies. "The corporate wars. The companies that founded this place turned on each other, tried to seize total control. A lot of civilians took shelter in these tunnels." He smiled grimly. "History has a way of repeating itself." "Jensen," Lyria's voice had taken on an odd tone. "These markings on the wall, they're not from your war." He moved closer, examining the strange symbols she was pointing to. They seemed to shift and change as he looked at them, making his head hurt. "What are they?" "Stellaris script," she breathed. "Emergency coordinates. My people were here long before your colony. They left. Safeguards." Before Jensen could ask what she meant, his comm unit crackled to life. "Doc," Kine's voice filled the small space. "I know you can hear me. Let's talk about this." Jensen's hand tightened on his pulse pistol. "Nothing to talk about, Kine. You sold us out." "You don't understand what you're involved in," Kine insisted. "The purifiers, they're not what you think. They're trying to save us all." Lyria stepped forward, her voice carrying an authority that Jensen hadn't heard before. "Is that what they told you when they hired you to betray your friend? That they're saviors?" "They showed me the truth," Kine's voice grew harder. "About what your kind can do, the power you wield. It's not natural, it's not right." "And genocide is," Jensen cut in. "Mass murder of an entire civilization, that's your definition of right." There was a pause, then Kine sighed. "I'm sorry, Doc, I really am. But they're coming down that tunnel now, and there's nowhere left to run. Give her up, and maybe they'll let you live." Jensen looked at Lyria, saw the weight of her people's extinction heavy in her eyes. "You know what, Kine? I've spent my whole life patching up the wounds that people like you create. Not this time." He switched off the comm and turned to Lyria. "Those safeguards you mentioned, now would be a good time." Lyria moved to the wall, her fingers tracing the shifting symbols. They're not just coordinates, they're quantum anchors, points where reality is flexible. Her skin began to glow brighter. I can use them, but it will alert every purifier in the sector to our location. Better than dying here, Jensen pointed out, hearing the approaching footsteps growing louder. Lyria nodded, then pressed her palm flat against the wall. The symbols flared with brilliant light, and reality itself seemed to shudder. Jensen felt his stomach lurch as probability fields collapsed and reformed around them. "What did you do?" he gasped, struggling to stay upright as the room spun. "I shifted us," Lyria explained, supporting him. "We're still in the bunker, but now we exist in a quantum state between moments. The purifiers won't be able to reach us here." She smiled sadly. "But we can't stay long. This kind of displacement is unstable." Jensen steadied himself against the wall. "So we've bought some time. What's our next move?" Lyria's expression grew determined. "The coordinates weren't random. There's a hidden Stellaris facility nearby, deep beneath the colony. My people left more than just safeguards here, they left weapons." "Weapons?" Jensen raised an eyebrow. "I thought your people were peaceful." "We were," Lyria's eyes darkened. "Until peace meant extinction. The facility contains prototype quantum armaments designed to fight the very technology the purifiers used to destroy us." She met Jensen's gaze. "Will you help me claim them?" Jensen thought of Kine's betrayal, of the purifier's fanatical determination to erase an entire species from existence. He thought of Lyria's strength, her refusal to let her people's legacy die. "Lead the way, Your Highness," he said with a slight bow. "Let's show the purifiers what happens when you corner someone with nothing left to lose." As reality began to stabilize around them, Lyria and Jensen prepared to venture deeper into the colony's forgotten depths. Above them, the purifiers would find only an empty bunker and a growing realization that their hunt had just become a war. The hidden Stellaris facility lay like a sleeping giant beneath New Haven Colony, its metallic walls shimmering with faint iridescence that reminded Jensen of Lyria's skin. They had been navigating its winding corridors for hours, following quantum signatures that only Lyria could perceive. "My people built this as a failsafe," Lyria explained, her hand trailing along a wall that seemed to respond to her touch. "They sensed something coming, even if they didn't know exactly what it would be." Jensen adjusted his medical bag, now filled with strange Stellaris devices they'd salvaged along the way. "They knew enough to prepare weapons. That says something." "We were not always peaceful," Lyria admitted, stopping before a massive door covered in shifting symbols. "There were elements among us who argued for more aggressive measures. They were overruled." Her voice grew bitter. "Perhaps if they hadn't been, my people would still be alive." Before Jensen could respond, the facility's lights suddenly pulsed red. A holographic display materialized in the air, showing multiple heat signatures moving through the tunnels above. "They found us," Jensen muttered, checking his pulse pistol. "But how?" "Because I led them here," a familiar voice echoed through the corridor. Kine stepped out of a side passage, holding an unusual weapon that hummed with dark energy. But he wasn't alone. Beside him stood a tall figure in seamless black armor, its surface seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. The Purifier commander's helmet retracted, revealing features that were almost human, but wrong in subtle ways that made Jensen's skin crawl. "Princess Lyria," the commander's voice was smooth, cultured, utterly devoid of emotion. "The last ember of a fire that should have been extinguished. How fitting to find you here, seeking weapons that will never be used." Lyria stepped forward, her silver skin blazing with inner light. "You murdered my people, erased them from existence, and for what? Fear." "Not fear," the commander corrected. "Necessity. Your species represented an evolutionary dead end, a path that would have led to chaos, the ability to manipulate probability itself." He shook his head. "The universe has rules, Princess, natural laws that must be preserved." "By committing genocide?" Jensen's grip tightened on his weapon. "That's a hell of a way to preserve natural law." The commander's inhuman eyes fixed on him. "Ah, the human protector, so typical of your kind, rushing to defend that which you don't understand." Did she tell you what her people were planning, the weapons they were developing? Don't listen to him, Lyria warned, but the commander continued. They sought to rewrite reality itself, to reshape the universe according to their whims. Imagine that power in the hands of beings who thought themselves gods. He gestured around them. This facility isn't just a weapons cache, it's a reality engine, the prototype for a device that could have unmade everything. Jensen glanced at Lyria, saw the conflict in her violet eyes. Is he telling the truth? Before she could answer, Kine raised his weapon. It doesn't matter now. The purifiers are going to finish what they started. I'm sorry, Doc, but this is bigger than any of us. You're right about that, a new voice called out. From another corridor emerged a group of figures, aliens of various species, led by a scarred Centaurian warrior. But you're wrong about everything else. The commander's expression didn't change, but his helmet snapped back into place. The resistance, how unfortunate. More like inevitable, the Centaurian growled. Did you think you could erase an entire civilization without others noticing, without us gathering evidence, building a network, waiting for the right moment? He nodded to Lyria. When we detected Stellaris quantum signatures in this sector, we knew we'd found what we were looking for. Jensen moved closer to Lyria as more resistance fighters emerged from hidden passages. Friends of yours. Allies, she corrected. Species that recognize the purifiers for what they are, not preservers of natural law, but fanatics who would murder anyone different from themselves. The commander observed the growing standoff with clinical detachment. You cannot stop what has already been done. The Stellaris are gone. Their probability manipulation ended. Order preserved. Order, Lyria's voice cracked with emotion. You call this order? My people never sought to be gods. We wanted to understand the universe, to explore its possibilities. The weapons, the reality engine, they were meant to create, not destroy. The difference is irrelevant, the commander stated. Creation and destruction are merely different forms of change, and change must be contained. Kine shifted nervously as more resistance fighters took up positions around them. Commander, we're outnumbered. Numbers are irrelevant as well. The commander raised his hand, and energy began crackling around his armor. We have contained change before. We will do so again. Jensen saw what was coming a split second before it happened. He tackled Lyria just as reality itself seemed to twist, the commander's armor releasing a wave of anti-probability energy designed to erase quantum manipulation. But something unexpected happened. As the wave reached Lyria, her skin blazed with blinding light. The Stellaris symbols on the walls flared in response, and suddenly the facility itself seemed to awaken. You forgot something, Commander. Lyria rose to her feet, power coursing around her. My mother didn't just save me. She gave me everything, every secret, every technology, every possibility our people ever discovered. Her 3 eyes blazed like violet stars, including how to counter your weapons. The fight that was about to begin would determine not just their fate, but the future of entire civilizations. As Jensen readied himself for battle, he couldn't help but smile. Sometimes, preserving natural law meant letting change happen. And change, he suspected, was about to hit the purifiers like a quantum hammer. The ancient Stellaris facility had become a battlefield of impossible physics. Reality itself buckled and warped as Lyria's quantum powers clashed with the purifier commander's probability-negating technology. Jensen took cover behind a crystalline pillar, pulse pistol ready, watching in awe as silver energy cascaded around them. You cannot win, the commander's voice echoed, distorted by the reality distortions. Your species was judged and found wanting, accept your extinction. Lyria's response came in the form of a quantum surge that sent several purifier soldiers flying backward, their armor crackling with disrupted energy. The resistance fighters pressed the advantage, their diverse weapons and tactics keeping the enemy off balance. Your judgment means nothing, Lyria declared, her silver skin now radiating with pure probability manipulation. You didn't eliminate us because we were dangerous. You did it because we represented something you couldn't control, the possibility of change itself. Jensen spotted Kine trying to flank their position and took a careful shot, disabling his weapon. Their eyes met briefly across the chaos, former friend to betrayer, before Kine disappeared into a quantum fluctuation. The Centaurian resistance leader fought his way to Jensen's position. The facility's power core is becoming unstable. All this quantum manipulation is affecting it. Can it be contained? Jensen asked, ducking as reality rippled overhead. Contained? No, the Centaurian grinned fiercely, but it can be directed. Understanding dawned on Jensen's face. He activated his comm. Lyria, the core, you can use it. Lyria's voice resonated in his mind, a new development of her powers that still startled him. The reality engine, yes, but Jensen... She paused, deflecting another attack. Using it could tear a hole in space-time. Everyone here would be at risk. Then we'll take that risk together, he replied firmly. End this, once and for all. The commander seemed to sense their intention. You would risk universal collapse to preserve a dead species. This is why you were judged unworthy. No, Lyria's voice carried the weight of her entire civilization. This is why we were judged too powerful to let live, because we understood something you never could, that the universe isn't meant to be preserved in stasis. It's meant to evolve. She reached out, connecting with the facility's ancient systems. The walls began to pulse with living light as probability itself began to concentrate around them. Jensen felt reality becoming fluid, malleable. What are you doing? The commander demanded, his composed facade cracking for the first time. Showing you true power, Lyria answered. Not the power to destroy or preserve, but the power to transform. The facility's core erupted with quantum energy, channeled through Lyria's being. But instead of destruction, the energy began to coalesce into something new. Within the swirling vortex of probability, shapes began to form: cities, ships, people. Impossible, the commander whispered. You're reconstructing them. Not reconstructing, Lyria corrected, her 3 eyes blazing with triumph. Bringing them back from quantum storage. Did you think my mother only saved me? She saved everything, our entire civilization, transformed into quantum data, waiting for the right moment to reemerge. The air filled with ghostly forms solidifying into reality, thousands of Stellaris, preserved in quantum stasis, now returning to physical form. The commander staggered back as his worst fear materialized before him, an entire civilization refusing to stay erased. Your judgment is overruled, Lyria declared. The facility's power reached a crescendo, and reality itself seemed to split open. Through the rift, Jensen caught glimpses of a shining world, a new home for a reborn species. The commander raised his weapon in one last desperate attempt, but Jensen was faster. His pulse pistol shot struck true, shorting out the purifier's armor systems. As the commander fell, his helmet retracted one final time, revealing an expression not of hatred, but of fear. You don't understand what you've done, he gasped. Oh, I think we do, Jensen replied, moving to stand beside Lyria. We've proven that some things can't be erased, some changes can't be stopped. The quantum rift stabilized, forming a gateway between spaces. The restored Stellaris began moving through, their silver forms shimmering with renewed life. Resistance fighters rounded up the remaining purifiers, ensuring they would face justice for their crimes. Lyria turned to Jensen, her expression soft despite the power still radiating from her. Come with us, she said. Help us build something new, something better. Jensen looked around at the facility, at the blending of human and alien technology, at the promise of a future he never could have imagined. You know what? After years of patching up the wounds of war, I think I'd like to help build something for a change. Lyria smiled, taking his hand. Together, they stepped through the quantum gateway, leaving behind a universe of rigid order for one of infinite possibility. The last thing the commander saw before being led away by the resistance was the impossible sight of a dead civilization returning to life, proof that sometimes the greatest power isn't the ability to end things, but to help them begin again. Behind them, New Haven Colony buzzed with rumors of strange lights and impossible events in its depths. But for those who had witnessed it, the truth was clear. Change had come to the galaxy, and nothing would ever be the same again.